Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. My name is Brian Bosarge. I'm your co-host for the evening with my co-host, as always, going forward, Shane P. Hallam. Shane, we are counting it down. We are 238 days, 22 hours, 59 minutes, and 10 seconds away from the 2022 NFL Draft, and we're at halftime of the Montgomery Kickoff Classic here, 10-0 UAB as we're going live here. But Shane, man, been a busy week here for us at Draft Countdown.
It has. Week 0 is not the greatest slate. I think it'll be some busier weeks coming up, but still was nice to put out content, watch real college football, and assess some prospects for better or for worse. So.
Absolutely. And Shane, is there any truth to the rumors that for your 2025 rankings, you've been scouting some Bishop Sycamore players?
Look, I guess those were could be, since half of them were college players anyway. So they were here. They were right. They were 10 minutes away from me playing Stowe Rocks the Friday before they played IMG. Like I could have went to the game. Would have been a lot of. It would have been interesting to be like, oh wait, I just saw that team. Yeah, they're bad.
Yeah, I mean that was crazy. That whole deal. I mean, if you haven't heard anything about it, you're just now watching this. Just Google Bishop Sycamore and just read all the fun jokes that's been going on at their expense for the last week. Basically, a fake high school with JUCO dropout players that were getting smoked by IMG Academy, who's not a real high school but pretends to be. At least they have high school kids that are playing on their team. Shane, you mentioned week 0 earlier. Wasn't a whole lot of action. We watched 4 games. Who were some of the standout guys for you this week?
Well, I think the first one that kind of jumped off the page was Southern Utah's offensive tackle Braxton Jones. That he was probably the guy I was most excited to see from this week go up against San Jose State, which may not seem like much, but Cade Hall, the pass rusher for them, is probably a draftable prospect. He's probably in that range. He'll at least get signed. So, this is probably the biggest test that I've seen Braxton Jones face, and I memean, he crushed him. Like, Cade Hall didn't have a tackle in the game. He did extremely well. So, when we were kind of putting this together, I know you and I talked about for the picture for the week 0 primer, who's the best prospect or whatever. And I was like, I don't think Braxton Jones is there yet. But after this game, I'm like, I think Braxton Jones was the best player that I watched this weekend. So I maybe missed the ball on that one, but he was definitely number 1 for me in terms of players that, showcased going up against real talent and showcasing that he can hold his own. I think we'll be hearing a lot from him, especially when we get to All-Star game season, that kind of thing.
He has another big showcase this week against Arizona State. Not a lot of people are going to see it since it's on the Pac-12 network, but a big showcase for him this week. I think in hindsight, if we had to go back as to who was going to be our cover person for the week 0 primer, we probably could have gone with several other candidates that weren't Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska. Ronnie Rivers from Fresno State was another guy. I liked him coming in. I liked him even more coming out. After this week in their game against UConn, 120 yards total offense. He took just run a beautiful route on a 61-yard touchdown catch. I thought he looked absolutely great.
What do you kind of think about his draft prospects? Like, where do you think he kind of stands? Because I think he's an excellent college player, but I think I have a lot of trouble seeing him going higher than the 6th or 7th round, especially this year.
I think, and I kind of wrote it up a little bit in the write up for that game. I think his ceiling is potentially Demetric Felton, the UCLA running back, who was a running back a year ago, but basically became a wide receiver at the Senior Bowl and beyond. And he went with the 6th or 7th round this year. So, but he tested poorly. So maybe Ronnie Rivers can maybe test a little bit better in this offseason and not maybe go in that 4th, 5th round area if he's lucky. But I think that's his prognostication going forward is the Demetric Felton type player.
I think it'll be interesting. It's, all these positions are fairly deep, and so that makes it tough. So, yeah, I think a lot will depend on that workout, but it's always nice to win 45-0 against UConn, a former Big East stalwart UConn.
Times have changed. Another guy I think we both thought stood out this week in their win against Hawaii was a guy we didn't have on the watch list prior to our mock draft show on the Debbie Marketplace podcast last week, was Sean Ryan, the offensive tackle from UCLA.
Yeah, he was good. I was looking forward to watching him after Matt Valdovinos took him in the first round on my podcast with Kane. And look, Hawaii isn't exactly a team that's going to give you a ton of problems, so I'm not exactly ready to crown him, but he was the lead blocker for a lot of those big runs for Zach Charbonnet, getting to the second level to hit a second block. The touchdown in the red zone, I thought Sean Ryan was the guy that kind of made that happen. So he's definitely someone that I'm going to take. I put him on my list fairly high. I've watched him, play this year, which is we've only had a couple games, and most of these players were not great. So we'll see how he kind of shakes out in my rankings, I think, going forward for sure.
I think he'll have a big test this week going against, LSU, a couple edge rushers, Ali Gay, Mike Jones Jr. I mean, those guys for LSU are going to come after him probably a lot more than what Hawaii did. Excuse me. One more guy from week 0. We'll get out of here. A guy you were high on, I believe, coming into the week, another UCLA player, running back Zach Charbonnet, transferred from Michigan.
You can't get much better. His stat line was impressive, and he's a former high 4-star recruit, low 5-star recruit, depending on where you looked. And as the Michigan Wolverines go, they don't develop their offensive skill talent very well. Us that play Debbie Fantasy Football know that very well. The guys go to Michigan to die. And last year, Charbonnet had a huge run week 1 against Minnesota, and they never gave him the ball again. And so I was excited to see him because, I don't know if he was exactly going to be the starter. He wasn't even necessarily the starter. But 6 carries to have over 100 yards, to have multiple touchdowns. It's pretty impressive. So I think he's a player, not that he's a top 5 running back in this class, but he has the athletic ability. We know that from the recruiting. And if he can, in Chip Kelly's rush offense, he seems to have adjusted very quickly and very well. So I'm excited to see what happens going forward. I would imagine he's going to end up being a 4-year player and stay there another year, but you never know.
I mean, again, Hawaii's not exactly the 85 Bears defense there, but 17.7 yards a carry and 3 touchdowns and a half. That's nothing to sneeze at there for Charbonnet. So that we'll wrap up week 0 with that, Shane. We're going to get into a little fun segment here. And we're going to try to do this, a few more times with different positions. But we've each got our position rankings out there right now. Again, nothing's set in stone because there's some of these guys, I haven't watched at all, and other guys, just kind of getting started. But we're gonna look at each of our top 10 quarterback rankings here and kind of see where we have who or what. And we'll start with the 10th spot here. Shane, you have Desmond Ridder, the quarterback from Cincinnati, and I have Chase Garbers, the quarterback from Cal. Talk to me a little bit about Ridder, who comes in at 7 on my list.
And like you said, this is far from finalized, right? We got a long way to go, and new guys will pop in. Some of these guys might not, be here later. I like Ridder, right? He had a great year last season. I like the athletic ability. I like his movement ability. He has good size. You look at him and you see, okay, this guy could be a pro quarterback. And I think he's smart. I think he plays smart. I think he knows football well. He knows how to read defenses. My big thing with him is his arm's not that strong. The zip is just not what I would want in a top 100 quarterback even. And so I kind of have this internal struggle because I like him as a player. The footwork and the technique as well is a little bit off-putting. But and I think he checks a lot of those boxes, but like I just can't get over the arm, and I don't think his ball placement's good enough for him to overcome that. Maybe this year he improves and takes a step forward, and he could be a higher ranked quarterback for me, but I'm just not there yet.
Ritter, I know Jim Nagy tweeted out they had a jersey ready for him for the Senior Bowl. He was an accepted invite, but went back to school. He would have early graduate, a junior would have been eligible to play. So the Senior Bowl was ready to go with him at that game last year. Obviously, you have to think that means that they'll be comfortable with him, down here again next year as well. I had Chase Garber's number 10 again. Like I said, I don't think I've watched as many quarterbacks as you have. So Garber's is a little bit higher for me. He's an inconsistent player. I think when he's on, he's not dissimilar to me, Kellen Mond in that regard from last year, where when he's in rhythm and everything's going well, everything's good. If he's off rhythm, it goes bad in a hurry. Inconsistency, if you will, with Chase Garber's, I think. But like I said, right now, number 10 on my list.
I really liked him coming into last year, and last year he kind of disappointed. So he's definitely not like someone I'm writing off, because I thought he was really talented, and I think, and we got to see a little bit of his brother this week in week 0 too. So that was fun.
Yeah, he's currently the backup at UCLA, transferred from Washington. Ethan, I believe, is Ethan Garber is his name. Number 9. I have Phil Jurkovec, the Notre Dame transfer at Boston College. You have Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. Daniels is one I've only watched passively. So tell me what you like and don't like about Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels is kind of the tale of two different years. His freshman year, it seemed like this guy was the next, Kyler Murray potential type player, where he's just so athletic, he's so elusive, and he can make plays happen. And then last year, they barely threw with him. When he did, he was really just off the mark. Didn't look confident in himself. Didn't look comfortable. It was like, what happened? And as I've learned, like, I've fallen in love with freshman quarterbacks before. Josh Rosen is one, where if that improvement doesn't happen, I need to be a little more diligent to say, let's pump the brakes. But I feel like the potential's there. Like, it's there for him. If he puts this year together and has a great year, and we could be talking about a potential first-round pick. But last year was so bad that I don't know. So I think 9's a good spot for me to feel good, about, okay, he could go up, he could go down. We'll see what happens.
The only game I really kind of took in of him last year, heck, it might not have been last year. It might have been the year before that. Now that I'm thinking about it, was against Oregon. The game where they beat Oregon in the big upset. Phil Jurkovec is a guy, I think Notre Dame, I'm not going to say they regret letting him get away, but to me, he's a better quarterback than they've had at Notre Dame in the last few years, and I think he's better than Ian Book. I think our good buddy Scott Wright would agree with that as well. Jurkovec's definitely got the size, 6'5", 226. He's got a good arm. He's another one where you want to see him take that next step this year.
I like him too. I mean, he's my number 12, and I could easily have him like number 7 and feel fine. I think he was in my article of who could be the next Zach Wilson. I think Jurkovec could. I watched him in high school here in Pittsburgh. He was very good. So I'm excited to see this year. I think Boston College will be even better too.
They should be a fun team to watch. They've got some decent weapons on offense as well. So I think they'll be a fun team to watch this year. 8 on our list. You have, I feel like I'm going to butcher this last name. Is it Tyler Show?
Yeah. So I say it wrong too. So, I always say Shock, which I don't think is correct. Shock, perhaps. But something I'll get to at some point. Yeah.
Anyway, that guy that transferred from Oregon is now at Texas Tech. Not the old Texas Tech Cliff Kingsbury offense. It's not the air raid anymore. So he's number 8 for you, where I have JT Daniels, the Southern Cal transfer, now at Georgia, who is your number 7 quarterback. So we'll start with Tyler S. Tell us what you dislike about him.
Yeah. So, for Tyler Schaub, he has the size, just like you talked about with Phil Jurkovic. I mean, this guy's 6'5", 220. He can move in the pocket. He's not a runner by any means, and I wouldn't categorize him as such, but he's one of those bigger guys that can move, that can take off and get a first down if you need it, that can give a little bit after when he's running as well. So I like that mobility. I think it's important in the NFL now to have some of that mobility. And he has a good arm strength. He gets the ball down the field really well. He throws a very pretty ball. So there's just like huge upside with him. All those tools kind of line up for what I wanted. Like if I would build an NFL quarterback, Tyler Shaw's not too far off of that. But just the inconsistency at Oregon, that they kind of didn't let him, hit the gas. Like he was held back from what he was allowed to do, the passes he was allowed to make. So I just don't know if the mental aspect is there, if he can read a defense, if he can go through progressions, if he can be successful at making those choices. Had some games where he made some definite bad throws, errors, ball placement errors. So big upside there. And I think it's a perfect situation and system for him. So I'm excited to see him this year.
And JT Daniels, like I said, my number 8, your number 7, looked like, he was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. Remember that correctly. And then basically he gets hurt and Don Slovis comes in and doesn't look back. He goes to Georgia, where couldn't beat out a walk-on quarterback, or maybe Kirby Smart just outthought the room there, and doesn't play him until like the 4th game of the season. By that time, Georgia's out of the national championship race. There's a lot of
he was hurt last year.
Oh, he was okay.
Year, so
there's a lot of people, speculating, if JT Daniels has started the whole way, maybe Georgia's in that national championship hunt last year. He's another one where I think he's accurate, and I think he's got a good enough arm. Maybe needs to add a little weight to his frame. I think he's sub 200 pounds or right at it. But he's another guy. I'm not going to say he's the most athletically gifted quarterback out there, or at least not from what I've seen anyway. But JT Daniels is a guy that I think he's going to be on the big stage all year long, including this week, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But JT Daniels at Georgia, bottom half the top 10 for both of us.
I just think with a bigger sample size, we might both have him higher. If he had started all year and you got to see him play Alabama and play Florida, the schedule was fairly tame. Nothing against your Gamecocks there, but the schedule was fairly tame for the defenses that he played. And even against Cincinnati in the bowl game, it wasn't the greatest performance from him, but he kept them kind of in that game to win it. So I think the arm strength's there. Like I think those physical tools are there. I wish he was mobile. I wish he could move in the pocket more. He's not the worst in my top 10 at that, but he's he definitely struggles with that. So I'm excited. Like he's another one that he could be a top 5 NFL draft pick. He has those tools, but will he take that step? Will Georgia allow him? They're kind of weak on the weapons right now, and I think that might impact his draft stock a little bit.
Yeah, they had some injuries at receiver, right? George Pickens, is he still hurt?
George Pickens is out for the year. Eric Gilbert, the transfer, hasn't returned to the team at this point. Their top tight end, Darnell Washington's hurt. Yeah. Some mental health issues, and hopefully he gets right. But you're missing 3 potential top weapons. It's tough.
All right, we've both gone over number 7s on our list. We've talked about Desmond Ridder, number 7 on mine, JT Daniels, 7 on yours. So we'll go to 6 here with a guy. We were talking about JT Daniels, not an athlete. This guy, number 6 on your list, athletic ability is not his issue. Malik Willis from Liberty. What is his issue, Shane?
Malik Willis is a absolute stud in terms of athletic ability, right? I mean, that's what he's good at. But man, I mean, he has some games there that like he just throws wild passes and takes risks that he doesn't have to take and throws interceptions and turns the ball over. He had just 2 games that I was like, okay, this guy's not NFL material. But then you look at everything else. You look at the other games that he played, and you really see a player that has huge upside, throws a beautiful pass. But it was like the tougher teams that he went against, Coastal Carolina and NC State, that he struggled. So like the tools are amazing. If I had to bet on, if you told me one quarterback, it's not in our top 2, goes top 5 in the NFL draft, I'd probably bet on Malik Willis. Just because he could throw the ball 60 yards, he can throw it on a rope, he can run. He has all this huge toolbox to work from, but like the mental side of the game and reading a defense and really being able to hit a receiver where he wants to place the ball was not there last year, especially when defenses were trying to disguise coverage and trick him. So that's a fear, but man, I mean, this year, if he plays really well, I think NFL team's going to be super interested.
I have a correction to make. Malik Willis number 6 on my board, not yours. He's number 4 on your board. I think I had that backwards.
Oh, okay,
gotcha. Number 6 on your board is number 3 on my board. It's Nevada quarterback Carson Strong. And I watched, like I said, I think I've said this in multiple times. I watched in probably insane amount of Nevada games last year that I really should have for a team that had no draft prospects. I just couldn't really take my eyes, or guys that were drafted. I guess they were technically draft eligible, but obviously didn't come out. But Carson Strong, he's got a big arm. He's accurate. He can make throws, but immobile is putting it kindly here. Basically, he averaged about a half a yard per carry every time he carried the ball. A lot of that probably sacks, if I had to take a guess at it. But Carson Strong, with a clean pocket, not going to be many in this draft class better than he is.
I think he's an excellent passer. I think without pressure, without any type of issue, you're right. Like, he's good, and this offense is built for that. Like, the offense is built for him to get that ball out quickly. But when he was pressured, when he was challenged, I thought that he struggled. And I think if you go back to to 2 years ago when he played some better competition, you really see that now. Like, it's 2 years later, he might be much better at it, but like it's not dissimilar to Zach Wilson in terms of, like, I was a little scared off from 2 years ago what we saw, but Carson Strong, I think, has to kind of prove, if he can do this 2 years in a row, then he'll be good. I mean, just the accuracy that he has, the arm strength, but man, he's a statue. And I'm just not sure if you can do that anymore in the NFL. Like, he's not good at sidestepping even a pass rush or rolling out. And I don't know if the NFL, I don't know how the NFL is going to feel about it. And I think it could go either way. You could have some of these old school mentality guys are like, I'll take him, and he's tough, and he'll take the hits and whatever. And you could have some guys that are like, look, in today's NFL, you got to be able to move. So I think in terms of like raw arm talent, he's in my top 3, but overall, yeah, I mean, I put him at 6.
What scares me with my infatuation with Carson Strong is amongst group of 5 teams, there may not be a better set of skill players on another team outside of Nevada. But am I falling in love with him like I did with Josh Rosen 3 years ago, a guy who had the arm talent, had the accuracy, but couldn't move to save his life, and he's now on his 5th NFL team in 3-4 years. So it does worry me a little bit. Number 5 on our top 10 quarterbacks, we're the same. Mississippi quarterback Matt Corral.
I'm really excited for him. Like I think he's gonna break out in a big way. And last year, kind of had that coming out party against Alabama, right? Threw for over 350 yards, threw for 2 touchdowns, I think. And like went toe to toe with them. They almost beat them. Alabama pulled away toward the end. He's a player that has that full range skill set. He can run. He's not Malik Willis, he's not Jaden Daniels, but he can run and he can hurt you with his legs. He really has some good deep accuracy, which I think the NFL is preferring more and more. I think Zach Wilson going 2 kind of says that that's something that's important to NFL teams. And that's something he does really well. And, he works within the offense. He's good at taking pressure, evading pressure, at throwing under pressure, which I think is tough. Now, he had 2 awful games, like 2 downright terrible games where he was throwing balls up. He was thrown into just risky situations, trying to make something happen. And he had a 6 interception game and a 5 interception game last year. You take those out. You can't take those out, but you take those out. And like, this guy looks like a first round NFL quarterback. So like this year's just going to tell all. I really think he's going to come into the SEC and do some real damage. And, if he goes top 10 in the NFL draft, I wouldn't be surprised. If he goes third day, I wouldn't be surprised. So we'll see if he can kind of clean up that act a little bit to me.
He'll definitely get the eyeballs on him because people love watching Lane Kiffin. I do. It's fun.
Sure.
His iconic moment last year was against South Carolina when he threw his play sheet 30 yards up into the crowd. They had to go actually fetch it out of the crowd last year. But that was a Matt Corral touchdown pass to Elijah Moore, who was a high second-round pick this year, probably going to make some noise in the NFL this year. We've talked about your number 4 already, Malik Willis. Well, now we'll talk about my number 4 and your number 3. It's Southern Cal quarterback Don Slovis, who busted on the scene a couple of years ago. Was he a true freshman?
Yeah,
and but he wasn't highly recruited, right? He was like a 3-star quarterback coming out of Arizona. But I mean, he enrolled early and then made an early impact. And is he Sam Darnold again? Is that the kind of feeling we get with Slovis potentially?
Yeah, I think it is. And like I'm so close to moving him to 5 behind Willis and Corral. It might happen. Check out Draft Countdown. It might happen soon. I don't know. Because his same thing, like his freshman season was so good. His ball placement was, one of the best I felt like I had seen from a freshman almost ever. Just the ability to put the ball where his receiver could get it and the defender couldn't, especially in tight coverage. Then last year, he injured his elbow and shoulder, and there were some, especially towards the end of the season, some really bad moments from him. And so it's like, which one are we going to get? Was it health? If he's healthy and like his arm strength wasn't hit top notch to begin with. And then last year took a dive and it wasn't NFL caliber. Like Don Slovis last year wasn't NFL caliber, but I kind of blame the injuries for now. And if this year he can bring it back, like I think we could see it. It's going to be tough. So I don't know. He's a player that like, kind of like maybe you do with Carson Strong. Like, I feel like maybe I'm a little too high on him. Like I probably need to drop him. Just the upside's not there of a Willis or Corral, but there's some factors that he does really well against good competition as a freshman. It's like, how can that be a full lie?
Right. And I'm with you. I want to see him progress to where he was as in 2019. Maybe not as where he was in 2020. Can he get back to that 2021 level? That's why I have him below Carson Strong. And I'm with you. I think I'm going to be honest. I've almost talked myself into Matt Corral being up higher here. And maybe he will after the next few weeks, after I get, well, you'll get to see him first because you're watching him Monday night against Louisville. So we've talked about my number 3 is Carson Strong. Don Slovis, your number 3. So basically we're down to the top 2 here, which is pretty much everybody's top 2 at this point, I think. It's just in what order do you have them, and ours are different. So I'll go first. I have Sam Howell ahead of Spencer Rattler, and it's for a couple reasons. It's the devil you know almost as much as the devil you don't. I haven't studied Spencer Rattler as much outside of maybe a couple of games. One of those games was their game against Kansas State last year, where he kind of lost the game for Oklahoma. So Sam Howell is one where I'm more familiar with his body of work up to this point, having watched him play. His very first game was a win against South Carolina a couple of years ago. So it's like I'm more familiar. I feel like I'm more familiar with Sam Howell than I am Spencer Rattler. And that's kind of why I have him there ahead right now. But, this is going to be a situation maybe all year long, depending on how each play.
I think it's fair to have, Howell one. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, Sam Howell's terrible. I have Spencer Rattler one because of the physical tools. Like, he has the tool set to be an NFL quarterback. He was the number 1 overall recruit in his class, sat a year. And then you add in, he's playing for Lincoln Riley, who just churns out, quarterbacks going the greatest NFL draft quarterback run in NFL draft history. That means something too. And I agree with you. If you watched early Spencer Rattler last season, then there's no reason to have him number 1. I think later in the season, when he really kind of settled in, felt like he matured a little bit, knew the offense, that's where it happened. Like that championship game against Iowa State, where he didn't try to do too much like he was at Kansas State. He wasn't trying to make every play. He was winning the game. And then the Florida bowl game, where he just annihilated them. Now, their defense wasn't at full strength, but still fairly impressive. This, it's basically what their defense is going to be this year. He already torched them. I think he kind of got it. And you add in the big arm. You add in, I think he's probably a little bit better of a mover than Sam Howell is. I'll put him up there. I think Sam Howell's really good. And I think if Sam Howell this season does what he did the last 2 years, but having lost his top 2 receivers and top 2 running backs, then, I'm in. If he takes a step back, I think his draft stock could potentially take a tumble. So I think he needs to play really well. But once again, just kind of with Don Slovis, Sam Howell came in as a freshman and lit up the ACC and then did it again last year. It's got to be true. It feels like it can't be a lie, ultimately.
If you said one of these quarterbacks would tumble down into the first round, maybe even out, you think it'll be Howell before Rattler?
Yeah, 100%. I would bet a lot. If you told me one was going to do it, I'd bet it definitely was Sam Howell. Because I think Rattler has a nice floor built because of his physical tools. Even if he messes up, as long as he's not terrible or gets benched, I think a lot of NFL teams will trust the system and the arm talent. Howell doesn't have that wowing zip and those great physical tools that Rattler has. So that's the thing that I think could be a thorn in Howell's side if he doesn't play up to par this season.
All right, last question here on the quarterbacks. Give me one quarterback outside of your top 10 right now that you think could be in the top 3 by the end of the season.
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh man. All right. So I'm gonna go with Emery Jones, the quarterback for Florida. Right? Okay, top 3. We're talking about a guy going very high in the first round that's outside my top 10. Emory Jones has the tool set. He has the size. He has the running ability. He has, he should have good physical tools. He hasn't really played much. Seeing what Kyle Trask did last year. If Emory Jones does what Kyle Trask did with the physical tools and movement that he has, then he'd be a first-round pick. So do I think he's going to do it? No. But, if I have to go out on a limb, it's let me take someone in a spot where I think they could really hit it. That'd be mine.
It's hard to say with Emery Jones because all you've really seen him is in the original Tim Tebow role where he's just take the snap and run. I mean,
right.
That's all he's really done his entire career at Florida thus far. So he has to take a really big step this year throwing the ball. I kind of touched on him in a piece I wrote about a week or so ago, and I'm going to go with Grayson McCall, the quarterback from Coastal Carolina. Smallish, he's 6'3", 200 pounds, so he's got the size. He can run. He can throw. He's got some weapons around him. I think, I'm not saying he could take the Zach Wilson trajectory this year, but I think Grayson Mccall is a candidate here to be the riser as a redshirt sophomore this year.
I love that. I'm a big fan of his as well. I feel like I'm a little too high on him myself, but I like your article. I like what you laid out. He's still pretty young, and that offense is a little bit, it doesn't really showcase his talent, I think, as well either. But that's a good call. It's a good call.
All right. Well, 18 games between the both of us this week here, Shane. 9 apiece. We'll run through them right quick, and then we're going to hit on some of the big. We're going to call it the big two. But tomorrow night, Temple at Rutgers, Boise State at UCF. Those are 2 games that I have. You have South Florida at NC State and Ohio State at Michigan. Obviously, that's probably the biggest one of those 4, right?
Minnesota. I can't watch the Michigan game yet.
I'm sorry, Minnesota.
Right.
Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah, I'm excited. Like the piece I wrote, I graduated from Ohio State, so I'm a fan. And my co-host on the Debbie Marketplace, Ken Fussell, went to Minnesota, so we've been jawing at each other a little bit. I have much easier time here, but Ohio State always has a ton of prospects, and I think both of us have had multiple OSU players in our first round, so kind of be a good first look, I think, on a Thursday night where you don't always get that. So,
right. The Friday night, we have North Carolina at Virginia Tech. Probably the better game, biggest game of the night. So you're going to get the first crack at Sam Howell this year against Virginia Tech's defense, which has some good players on it. Old Dominion at Wake Forest is a game I'll have, as well as Michigan State Northwestern, which has a lot of good prospects in that game. A guy I'm most interested in that was, I know a lot of people are high on him, is redshirt sophomore safety Brandon Joseph from Northwestern. He's a guy I'm anxious to see in that one. And South Dakota State and Colorado State is your closer on Friday night.
Yeah, I might fall asleep, but I'll watching that one, but I'll be there.
Yeah, that's a 8 p.m. kickoff on Fox Sports 1. So up late on the Friday night. A game that was supposed to be in New Orleans, but obviously can't be because of the hurricane that just passed through the Gulf Coast here. And our thoughts are with everybody down in coastal Louisiana and Mississippi dealing with those issues. But the game moved to Norman. So I'll get the first crack at Spencer Rattler this year in what has now become their de facto home game against Tulane. Penn State, Wisconsin. That should be another good one. That's a big noon kickoff there on Fox. That goes to you. We'll skip over this one because we're going to talk about it in a minute. I have West Virginia, Maryland, which Dante Demas, the wide receiver. I really like him a lot for Maryland. You get Louisiana and Texas.
Ooh, I'm excited. I'm excited for that game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, potential upset there.
Upset City
there for the future SEC bound Texas Longhorns. We'll skip this one, so we're going to talk about it in a minute. I'm still waiting to hear, Shane, but I may actually be at the Southern Miss South Alabama game live, covering that game in person for Draft Countdown. Still waiting to hear back from the South Alabama SID. So if you're watching, I'm waiting. But anyway, Nevada
awesome.
at Cal, a late game on FS1 on Saturday night. So and we were talking about Carson Strong and level of competition. He's going to get the Pac-12 defense. There's some good defensive players on that Cal defense. Kawani Dean, the linebacker specifically, is one that I'm pretty high on myself.
Yeah, you get two of your top 10 quarterbacks there.
There you go. There you go. Utah State at Washington State, late game on the Pac-12 network, Shane. You ain't going to have to go to nefarious means on that one, are you, Shane?
Look, we'll find a way to watch that.
We won't talk about it. We won't talk about it.
Let's find a way.
There's a couple of games Sunday. A lot of the HBCU games are happening Sunday. But the big game is that night on ABC, Notre Dame and Florida State. I'll have that one. And Kyle Hamilton, I heard a take today. Somebody said he's the best safety prospect ever.
Ever?
That was a hot take.
That's I don't know if you could be Sean Taylor for me, but that's
right.
But sure.
And then Monday night we talked about it. Labor Day night, Louisville and Mississippi there in Atlanta, and you've got that one. So, But yeah, so we skipped over a couple games there. We're going to hit on them here. Your big game this week, Alabama and Miami. 44 prospects on our watch list in this game, Shane.
That's gonna be a nice juicy article. I don't know when I'll get that one out, but I'm excited for the game. Like, I don't know. I like Miami more, I think, than a lot of people do in terms of them as a college football team. But there's a wide range of prospects for Miami, like D'Eriq King, quarterback. Is he someone? I honestly think I just want to see him play. Like, is he going to be someone that has to switch positions? Mike Harley at receiver. They have Zion Nelson, potential first-round offensive lineman on that offense. So I think Miami's offense is good, and Miami always brings the defenders too. So they definitely have a couple. Bubba Bolden, I think, maybe has a shot at being in the top 50 as a player that I like a lot. A couple edge rushers that are pretty good. So like even Miami just themselves, I think, has a good squad, but then you get Alabama, so you have you can't even talk about the quarterback. Bryce Young's not eligible, but like Brian Robinson's going to be the starting running back, and Alabama running backs go high. So like, am I too low on him? Evan Neal is, you could argue, could be the number one offensive prospect in this draft at left tackle. That I think the whole offensive line is almost just about as eligible and draftable. I think they have 2 first-round linebackers, Henry Toto and Christian Harris. Like, we get a potentially first, John Mechie, the third wide receiver, who could go pretty high. A number of corners. Like, I don't know. It just seems like every piece of Alabama, they always have a shot at going pretty high in the draft. So it's going to be fun to kind of parse that out, see who's playing well, and try to, get a good look at some of those players for the first time for sure.
Some news today on Alabama. He's probably a late round prospect because he's been injured a lot, but LeBrian Ray, interior defensive lineman, is going to play tomorrow night. He's been dealing with an injury, but he's been cleared to play, so he's good to go. Another receiver from Miami, Charleston Rambo, transfer from Oklahoma. Anxious to see how much playing time he gets there for the Hurricanes.
He was not high up on the depth chart they released, so I was a little surprised. So we'll see. I do hope to see, because he was like last year before the season was in. I think Mel Kiper's top 5 receivers for last year's draft, and that kind of fell off. So yeah, that's a good call though. There's some good players.
And then my big game tomorrow night is Clemson and Georgia. 45 prospects in this game. It's crazy. The amount of talent between Georgia. I think Georgia had 24 prospects on our watch list. Clemson had 21. I mean, this is big time. I want to go back to my who you got in that game, by the way? Does Miami cover the 18?
I have Miami covering. Yeah, I think they keep it 10 to 13 points. I'd say 10. I think they lose by 10.
Right. I meant to ask that a while ago, but back to the Clemson Georgia game. DJ, help me. I know you know what I'm saying. Uangalele. I guess I need to get to know his name since he's now the lead spokesperson for the greatest drink in the world, Dr. Pepper.
Nice.
Going against JT Daniels, a guy we talked to about earlier. It's going to be fun, man. I mean, and to be honest, I can't root for anybody in this game because I hate them both equally. But it's like I don't know. I think Georgia's I don't know. I hate Georgia less, so I hope Georgia wins just slightly less. But man, defense, especially up front, I think Georgia's best two players. I mean, I agree. I'll grant it. I'm higher on them than most. Is their two interior defensive linemen, Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt. I'm higher on them than a lot of people are, but I was high on them last year and didn't fall out of love. So I was going to be high on them coming into this draft class. I think they can be a matchup problem inside for Clemson's interior offensive line, and no Travis Etienne anymore. So I'm curious to see how that matchup works out.
Yeah, Justin Ross coming back, I think is exciting for Clemson. Like, after his medical issue, like I'm excited to see him, and going up again.
There's a couple of other receivers there that I haven't really, that I don't want. I mean, because maybe that I don't think they've really been on the field a lot. Is what Frank Ladson Jr. and Joseph Ngata are a couple of wide receivers who are going to emerge, and their tight end Galloway is another to watch out for in their offense. It's going to be a fun game.
Yeah.
Was Clemson the favorite there? Clemson the 3-point. It was Clemson the 3-point favorite. Who you got, Shane?
Oh man, it's tough. I want to say Clemson wins. I'll say by a touchdown. I think this game is more important to Georgia than it is to Clemson. Like, if Clemson loses this game, they're probably still going to run the ACC and make a playoff. Like, if Georgia loses this game, it's going to be an uphill climb. You basically got to win out, So I think it is a little more important for Georgia. But yeah, I think it's really going to come down to to the quarterback play and the pass rushes for these teams, what Georgia can do. But I think Clemson will win by about a touchdown. I think they'll find a way.
All right, so now here's our unannounced gambling segment of the week. We didn't bring this up before, and I didn't even tell Shane we were going to do it, but now we've talked about point spread and stuff, so we're going to get it out of the way now. What's your lock of the week, college football lock of the week this week, Shane?
Okay, all right. Do you have one? Do you want to go first?
I do have one.
Pull these lines.
I don't know what the line is right now, but I had it at Auburn 37 points against Akron. I think Auburn covers the 37. Akron is just terrible. And I think Brian Harsin, first game at Auburn, he's going to come out and try to light it up. Auburn wins that game 49-0.
I like it. I mean, I don't know if I could trust Bo Nix to put up 49 points, but other than that, I'll be in.
Give me a couple of defensive touchdowns or something in that game, maybe.
That's true. That's true. That's definitely a shot. Look, I'm going to go back to the game we talked about before. I'm taking Louisiana plus the 8 points against Texas. I think that, Levi Lewis coming back, their running back. I know they lost 2 running backs, but their running back, Chris Smith, is actually really good as well. So they're going to pound the football. Texas with Sarkisian, new offense, new quarterback in Hudson Card. The one thing I worry about is Bijan Robinson just running wild and being able to score a ton of points and holding the ball. But I think it'll actually be kind of a lower scoring game for Texas. So I think covering the 8 is definitely something that can happen. So yeah, I'm going Louisiana. I think it's going to be a good game for them, and I think the Raging Cajuns are a good team.
And that was our unsponsored, unsanctioned gambling post of the week. Again, take all that with a grain of salt, or just take your money and run it to your nearest casino because we're money. We should probably write this down and track this and see how we progress through this every week.
I'm sure people will let us know.
Thankfully, Cut Down Day did not fall on the Saturday that it usually does. It's usually ends up being on the Labor Day weekend, and cuts are coming in as you're trying to watch all the college games on Saturday. But it happened yesterday. Teams were adding players to practice squads today. Any surprising cuts out there, maybe specifically to the rookie class, the 2021 rookie class?
I think there's always some, and I tweeted from the Draft Countdown account and my own a little bit about this. Like, last year was the smallest class in NFL draft history. So some of these 4th and 5th round picks, like in normal years, might not get drafted, might be 7th rounders. So someone like Des Fitzpatrick getting cut when the Titans traded 3 picks to go up and get him, it was a little bit surprising. Like, I kind of got that initial shock, and then I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. And I think the fact that usually we have like one fourth rounder or something. It's like, oh wow, like someone really messed up. And this year there was a handful. But that was probably the one. I play in way too much fantasy football. Like I have some Des Fitzpatrick shares riding my taxi squads. So like, go on the practice squad and that's it. But I was definitely surprised to see that. But it makes sense. And I think next year, kind of the same thing's going to happen to this 2021 class. Like I think a lot of these decently drafted guys are going to end up getting cut for later drafted 2022 players.
Yeah, I actually had a higher grade on Des Fitzpatrick than I did his much more heralded and higher drafted teammate Tutu Atwell coming into this class. But I will say this, two of my guys from this class, Tommy Doyle, the offensive tackle Miami, Ohio, and Jake Funk, the running back from Maryland, both on the 53. So I'm gonna take take those W's right now, and you can't take them away from me, at least for another week anyway.
Jake Funk now with Akers going down, it's a good situation as the number 3 there, and Sonny Michel and Darrell Henderson aren't the healthiest guys in the world either. So might see some Jake Funk this year.
Some Funkadelic coming to the SoFi Stadium later this year. Put out a call. Haven't gotten any on Twitter, but we did get a question in the chat, so we're going to answer some questions here from the chat, which was just one. So, what does Sean Clifford need to show this year to get drafted, Shane?
He needs to put on the Superman cape, I think, and do something out of this world. I mean, I think Sean Clifford has, a decent athletic ability, but like he's never has had the arm. He's never had that kind of strength in zip. And then you add in like just multiple errors a game that have gotten him benched before. Like he's really just got to clean that up. Probably pull an upset for Penn State, beat Ohio State, have a big game against one of these really good defenses, and take Penn State to the playoff. Really, I think is going to be a big part of it. Like if he's throwing for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns a game, and they're wrecking the Big Ten, like then people notice. But I think it's going to take a Herculean effort for him to get drafted. I actually think a former teammate Will Levis at Kentucky will have a better shot when he eventually goes to the NFL than Clifford.
Thanks for that question, Astalos Mike. I think that's how we're going to pronounce that. That was the only question we actually had, but I posed this question on Twitter earlier, so I'm going to get your take on this, Shane. Is gumbo soup?
Oh, that's a good question. I really like gumbo. Like that's probably my specialty dish to cook. When my wife and I went to New Orleans, we took a cooking class and I learned how to make gumbo. I was like, this is amazing. Is gumbo? Yeah. It was exactly. That's why I wanted to do it. It was great. Is gumbo soup? I would say, I would probably lean yes in most cases. I feel like it's soup. Like it's kind of on that line between soup and stew. Right?
See, my wife, I posed a question to her, and she said she thinks it would be more along the line as stew. Our good buddy Pigskin Paul actually replied to my tweet earlier and said he says it's soup until you pour it over rice.
Oh, I guess that's true.
And once it goes over the rice, then it's not. Okay.
Yeah, you know what? I think Paul's statement there made me say it's not soup. Like if the best way to eat it is to pour it over rice, it's probably not soup.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But regardless, gumbo is good stuff.
It is good.
All right. Well, Shane, that's going to do it for tonight. Anything else before we get into these week 1 games?
No, I appreciate all the love for the site and people checking it out, and definitely follow us on Twitter, Draft Countdown, Shane P. Hallam, Deep Fred Draft, and join the forums, start some threads over there. We'd like to get that more active on Draft Countdown as well. So keep an eye out for that.
I actually did have one more question for you, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
My one and only fantasy draft is tomorrow night.
Okay.
I know you're in 155,000. I'm in one. I'm picking 8th in a 12-team PPR league. Who am I targeting?
Eighth is a rough spot, I think, to be in. For me, if Travis Kelce's sitting there, I'd take him. I would win the tight end battle every week. I like that strategy. If not, you got to take the best running back available. Whoever that, maybe it's Saquon, maybe it's Jonathan Taylor, one of those guys. I think can lock up that RB1 that's tough to come by this year. So that's my strategy for sure.
Yeah, tough spot. 8 out of 12.
Yeah, like later is good, or earlier is good. 8's kind of the worst case scenario for you there.
We randomly drew. It's in a league at my day job, and we randomly drew the. We basically we had the consolation ladder. Whoever doesn't make the playoffs, and whoever wins that gets to pick their spot the following year, and then everything else we randomly draw out of a coffee cup. And I drew the 8th spot. So, Shane, it's as always, it's fun. We're going to do this every Wednesday night for the foreseeable future at 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. And here on the Draft Countdown podcast, you can check this out on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that alert button, and you'll get notified when we go live. And then you can participate with your questions like Astrolus Mike did there, where we want to try to answer some questions each and every week at the end of the show. To get that participation up, and follow us on Twitter at Draft Countdown. Get your questions in there, or send them to me or Shane at Deep Fried Draft at Shane P. Hallam. We'll answer your draft questions live. And when this goes off the air, if you're a more audio type person, you don't like looking at our beautiful faces each and every Wednesday night, you can download the podcast. Will be uploaded to iTunes, Spotify, pretty much every other of the known podcasting platforms, but those being the two main ones. Apple Podcasts. You corrected me on that. It's not iTunes anymore.
Yeah,
it's Apple. It's Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Both will have the Draft Countdown podcast, and you can download that later and listen to this hour of beautiful draft goodness. But for Shane P. Hallam, I'm Brian Bosarge. Thanks everybody for watching the Draft Countdown. Until next week.